I want to be clear. We are encouraged that President Rouhani received from the Iranian people a mandate to pursue a more moderate course. And given President Rouhani's stated commitment to reach an agreement, I am directing John Kerry to pursue this effort with the Iranian government.
Some news today out of the UN as the president speaks out about the possibility of restarting nuclear talks with Iran in his address to the UN General Assembly. The president also saying the roadblocks may be too great between our two countries, but he believes the diplomatic path must be tested. This as we await a speech by the president, the new president of Iran. Iran's foreign minister is now saying a planned meeting this week at the UN to discuss restarting nuclear talks signals the start of a new era in the relations with the West. Talks and speeches are going on throughout the day. That's what you were seeing there, the live picture from the UN. Joining us now, Republican Congressman Ed Royce of California. He's chairman of the House Foreign Affairs Committee. Congressman, nice to have you on the program.
Thank you. Good to be with you.
What do you think about this more moderate course and what the president just laid out at the UN?
I think what's happened here is that Iran has looked at how North Korea obtained nuclear weapons capability. And especially right now when they're under crippling sanctions, about $600 billion over the last 2 years left the country, mass unemployment, very high inflation. They're trying to get out from under that. And they watched in 2005, if you'll recall, North Korea was under U.S. sanctions, and it was debilitating to that regime. And instead, North Korea was able to get those sanctions lifted by going into negotiations and string out the negotiations until they had the capability to have nuclear weapons. That's what Iran wants to do.
And
I think the president misinterpreted.
Yes. I apologize for interrupting, but just so that we can kind of pull that more into the conversation, it's a really important point in comparison to North Korea. We hear that the Prime Minister of Israel is going to make such a statement next week as well to reiterate what we should and should not do with Iran. You were in Congress when North Korea made that maneuver. How do we prevent Iran from doing that as well?
You know, Iran watched that playbook, and the way to do it is to recognize the mistake we made in 2005 or 2006 that our government made in lifting those sanctions. Instead, we should double down. We have legislation that I and Elliot Engel passed not long ago, a little over a month ago, out of the House of Representatives, now pending in the Senate. And I would suggest we should have that brought up in the Senate, put on the president's desk, and hold that as the hammer, because that additional legislation would absolutely block all repatriation of earnings into the country.
And that's why we're
Iran,
talking today.
And thus would destroy the economy.
Because we know that
Yes.
you've been critical to getting that House vote. It was an overwhelming House vote, and many that are familiar with the sanctions and the details of it all say this is crucial to really shutting down the Iranian economy and punishing the economy in the way that we want it to force a change. But it hasn't gone anywhere in the Senate. What do you do about that, Congressman?
Well, clearly the administration is opposed to moving the legislation in the Senate, despite, as you said, Jen, 400 votes in the House of Representatives. The only reason that the Iranians are at the table, the only reason they're trying to negotiate, is because they're concerned about us imploding their economy. And this time, we ought to give them this choice for the Ayatollah. Either you stop the enrichment, either you end your bomb-making capabilities, or we implode your economy, and we go through with it. And I think that is, frankly, the position that would give us the maximum amount of leverage and would be so injurious to their economy that it would be very hard for them to continue any kind of military buildup in that kind of situation where it would drive unemployment, drive mass hyperinflation, and it's a fact that the only thing that's ever worked on this, think about South Africa. When the sanctions went on, they gave up their bomb and they changed their system from apartheid. This is the type of approach that needs to be taken here.
The question then becomes one of timing. So you've passed this bill in the House. We're waiting on the Senate, waiting on the administration, as you mentioned. I was taking a look at what the president said about Iran last year during his speech, taking a look at some of his word choice. And I'd like to play just a little portion of that for you and then talk about timing. Let's go ahead and do that.
So let me be clear. America wants to resolve this issue through diplomacy, and we believe that there is still time and space to do so. But that time is not unlimited. We respect the right of nations to access peaceful nuclear power. But one of the purposes of the United Nations is to see that we harness that power for peace.
So here we are a year later, apparently a little bit more time. But how much time do we have before Iran has a nuclear weapon?
Very little time, and that's exactly what this is about. The reason Hassan Rouhani is here, the reason this initiative is being proposed is to get sanctions lifted and buy time for Iran to complete their program. And they are so close. They're maybe, a year away. And that's why we need exactly the opposite strategy from the one that the president is suggesting. We need, frankly, to close down that economy and give them that choice, because we don't need gestures. We need actions from Iran. As long as the centrifuges continue to spin, and these are 4 times more powerful than the ones that were spinning last year, as long as that continues to happen and Rouhani continues to tell his people, look what I was able to do when I was chief negotiator. I strung that out and we got those centrifuges up and running. He takes credit for that back home. So we should look him in the eye and we should say, shut down the centrifuges now, let the UN inspectors come in, let the inspectors of the AIEA take a look at what you're doing, and let them attest to the fact that you've closed down your operations in all of those sites across Iran, and let's start negotiating from there.
Congressman,
but let's not let them continue to do their buildup.
Before I let you go, and I should mention to our viewers that we'll be able to see what the Iranian president has to say a little bit after 4 p.m. Eastern today. He'll address the General Assembly, and we'll watch for that carefully. But I can't let you go without asking you about a different man. He goes by the name Soleimani, and he's head of the Revolutionary Guard in Iran, and he's been the head of the Revolutionary Guard for years now. The New Yorker has a big piece on him, his operations, how he has orchestrated the killing of Americans, how he's accepting $20 million from Iraq every single day to support his operations in Syria that are completely undermining anything that we could do in the region. What do we do about him? He's not affected by the sanctions, according to these reports, at all. How do we address that problem in Iran?
And this shows us the fact that Iran continues to put $200 million into Hezbollah, continues this type of support, and would even have someone like Hassan Rouhani, who himself was the one who, in 1999, called for the beatings of the students, called for the Basiji to go into the universities and beat them mercilessly. And over 100 people disappeared or killed, thousands arrested, hundreds and hundreds of students tortured. That was the same Hassan Rouhani that we're calling a moderate today. Let's not forget he was in his position as head of the National Security Council there in Iran during the time of the bombing of the Jewish Cultural Center in Argentina.
But according to reports, he's not half as bad. Even if that's all true, as you say, Congressman, according to reports, he's not half as bad as the guy Soleimani, who we'll show our viewers again because we're showing a couple different pictures. And the sanctions that you have passed don't affect the Revolutionary Guard. So what do we do about that?
Well, they do actually affect the Revolutionary Guard. They would affect the Revolutionary Guard because the Revolutionary Guard is the one that's repatriating a lot of the earnings from overseas, and it blocks that as well as their banking system. So this goes the extra step that the Treasury Department, that Stuart Levy, our former Undersecretary of Treasury, always wanted to take to totally close down the economy there and block all repatriation of profits back into the country. It would cut off not just the Revolutionary Guard, but it would bring the economy to a standstill. It's time to do it. We have no other option. We're out of time in order to stop their, 3-stage ICBM program, their miniaturization of the nuclear warhead, as well as their enrichment and reprocessing. I mean, they are building ICBMs that are going to be a threat to the United States and our allies, and it's time for us to act.
Congressman, nice having you on the program. I appreciate working through all of that with you and look forward to having you back, sir. Thank you very much.
Thank you.